Poor boy pushes black woman home in wheelbarrow, not knowing she's a billionaire in disguise. The wheelbarrow rattled loudly against the cracked sidewalk as 11-year-old Jessie struggled to keep it balanced. Inside it sat a woman, unconscious, her head bobbing gently with every bump in the road. Her skin glistened with sweat under the harsh Alabama sun, and despite her worn coat and dirt-streaked jeans, something about her posture, even in unconsciousness, spoke of a grace Jessie couldn't explain.
"Almost there, ma'am,"
Jessie muttered, breathless, his tiny hands gripping the wooden handles so tight his knuckles whitened. He wiped a bead of sweat from his brow with his sleeve. "Don't die on me now." That morning had started like any other. Jessie had been digging through the recycling bins behind Miller's diner, hoping to find a few empty bottles he could turn in for change. That's when he'd seen her, collapsed behind the alley, slumped against a dumpster, barely breathing. He had tapped her shoulder, whispered, then shouted. Nothing. Most kids would have run. But Jessie had seen too much suffering in his short life to turn away from it. So he borrowed old man Curtis's rusty wheelbarrow and made it his mission to save her. What he didn't know, what no one in that forgotten part of Montgomery knew, was that the woman in the wheelbarrow was Sylvia Green. The Sylvia Green, billionaire real estate mogul, disguised, exiled, and completely off-grid. As Jessie turned the final corner onto Pine Street, the sound of a car screeching to a halt pulled him to a stop. A black SUV blocked his path. Two men in suits jumped out, their sunglasses glinting under the sun. "Step away from the woman, kid!" one barked, hand drifting to his waist. Jessie stood protectively in front of the wheelbarrow. "She's sick." "She needs help." "She doesn't need you," the taller man snapped. "She's not who you think she is." "Then who is she?" The shorter man hesitated, pulled out a phone, showed Jessie a picture of the woman. But in that one, she was dressed in a sleek business suit, speaking at what looked like a TED Talk stage, her afro crowned with elegance. Jessie's jaw dropped. "That's her?" The agents exchanged a glance. Behind him, Sylvia stirred. Her voice, cracked and faint, whispered, "Don't let them take me." The agent stepped forward. But Jessie, small as he was, threw his arms wide. "Back off!" From behind the SUV, another car approached. A beat-up Chevy with mismatched doors. Out stepped a wiry woman in her 50s, wearing a stained apron and flip-flops. "What the hell's going on here?" It was Miss Clarine, the neighborhood's matriarch, guardian angel, and occasional terror.
"Jessie?"
she called.
"Is that you, baby?" "Miss Clarine, they're trying to take her."
The agent stiffened. Clarine marched up, eyes blazing.
"I don't know who y'all think you are, but you ain't taking nobody till you explain what the hell this is."
The taller man flashed a badge. "Federal Intelligence Unit." "This woman is wanted in connection with a multi-billion-dollar fraud case." Sylvia sat up suddenly, gripping the side of the wheelbarrow. Her voice was clearer now, though still hoarse. "Lies. They want me gone because I exposed their slush fund. They're not here for justice." Clarine raised an eyebrow. "That true?" Sylvia locked eyes with her. "Check my left boot." Clarine knelt, dug into the heel of Sylvia's boot, and pulled out a tiny USB. Sylvia nodded. "Everything you need to know is in there." "Names, accounts, dates." The shorter agent lunged. "Give that to me!" But Clarine, faster than she looked, spun out of his grasp. "Jessie!" she hissed. "Run!" Jessie didn't hesitate. He grabbed the wheelbarrow and bolted down the alley, heart pounding. Behind him, he could hear shouts, footsteps, the screech of tires. But all he focused on was the woman he barely knew and the way she'd whispered, "Don't let them take me." By the time Jessie ducked behind an abandoned warehouse, Sylvia had passed out again. He stared at her for a long moment, then whispered, "Who are you really?" When she opened her eyes this time, her voice was low but steady. "My name is Sylvia Green, and I was once the most powerful woman in real estate, until I tried to expose the people who run everything behind closed doors. They destroyed my company, froze my accounts, and sent me running." Jessie blinked. "Why come here?" She looked at him, really looked. "Because I needed to find people who still believed in right and wrong, people who wouldn't sell their soul for a paycheck." He swallowed hard. "So, what do we do now?" Sylvia smiled, a shadow of her old confidence flickering back. "We fight." And for the first time in Jessie's life, the word didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt real, because even if he was just a poor boy with a rusty wheelbarrow, he was now at the heart of something much, much bigger. And it was only the beginning. Jessie's heart thundered as he crouched in the shadows behind the abandoned warehouse. The wheelbarrow leaned against a stack of broken pallets, and Sylvia Green lay slumped inside it, her breathing ragged but steady. Every few seconds, Jessie peeked around the corner to check for the men in suits. Nothing yet. "What's on that drive?" Jessie asked, turning back to her.
Why do they want it so bad?
Sylvia's eyes fluttered open again.
It's a kill switch, she whispered. Proof of everything they've done. Laundered money, bribed officials, off-the-books land grabs.
Jessie blinked.
That's like movie stuff.
Sylvia's cracked lips twitched.
It's very real and very dangerous.
That USB could bring down some of the most powerful men in the country. He sat back, trying to wrap his head around it all. 1 second he was looking for soda cans. The next he was hiding a billionaire whistleblower from people who wanted her gone. Why not go to the cops? Sylvia turned her head slowly, locking eyes with him. They're in on it. Not all of them, but enough. Jessie swallowed. Then what do we do now? Find someone I trust. Someone outside their reach. There's a name. Lucia Prescott. She used to work with me. If she's still in New Orleans, she can help. Jessie frowned. That's like hours away. Sylvia gripped the edge of the wheelbarrow and sat up straighter. Her strength was slowly returning, but she still looked like she'd been dragged through hell. Then we better find a ride. That evening, Jessie pushed Sylvia through the narrow back streets of Montgomery until they reached Miss Clarine's house. The porch light flickered, casting long shadows as the old woman stepped out, shotgun cradled in one arm and a phone in the other. You sure you weren't followed? She asked, eyeing the street.
I circled through 3 alleys and cut through the church lot,
Jessie said, panting.
I think we're good.
Clarine nodded and motioned them inside.
She needs a bed, not a wheelbarrow.
Inside, Clarine laid Sylvia on her worn-out couch, covering her with a patchwork quilt. Then she poured a glass of sweet tea, added a splash of something stronger, and handed it over. Now, Clarine said, settling into her recliner, start talking. Sylvia told her everything, about the land deals, the offshore accounts, the threats, and the night she realized her closest advisors had turned on her. I went off the grid 3 months ago, she said. Faked my own disappearance. But someone must have tipped them off that I was still alive. Clarine stared at her a long moment. You ain't crazy. I'll give you that. Sylvia leaned forward. If we can get that drive to Lucia, we can break this open. She's got connections, good ones. Clarine pursed her lips. Then we need to get you out to Alabama by tomorrow night. I know a guy, drives deliveries cross-state, owes me a favor. Jessie shifted in his seat. Can I come? Clarine looked at him, brows raised. You sure, baby? This ain't some adventure. You could get hurt? Jessie's face hardened. She trusted me when no one else would. I'm not letting her do this alone. The next morning, a beat-up delivery van rolled into Clarine's driveway. The driver, a wiry man with a toothpick between his lips and music blaring from his speakers, gave Sylvia a curious glance. "She your cousin or something?" Clarine smiled tightly. "Just get her to New Orleans. No questions." As the van rumbled away, Jessie sat beside Sylvia, clutching a backpack that held the USB.
"So, Lucia, what's she like?" Sylvia chuckled softly. "Tough." "Brilliant, and ruthless when she needs to be." Jessie smiled nervously. "Sounds like you." Before Sylvia could answer, the van jolted to a sudden stop. Tires screeched. The driver cursed. "What the hell?" Outside, 2 black sedans blocked the road. Men in suits poured out, weapons drawn. "Out of the van!" one shouted. The driver threw his hands up. "I didn't sign up for this." Sylvia turned to Jessie. "Give me the drive." "No." "Jessie, I said no, you're weak." "You run, they'll catch you. I can hide it." Before she could argue, Jessie slipped out the back of the van, tucking the USB into the lining of his shoe. He sprinted toward a cornfield nearby, weaving through stalks taller than him. Behind him, he heard shouts, footsteps, the crunch of soil under boots. One man caught up fast, too fast. Just as Jessie stumbled, the man tackled him to the ground, pinning him with a knee to his back. "Where's the drive, kid?" "I don't know what you're talking about." The man patted him down. Nothing. He yanked off Jessie's backpack. Still nothing. He cursed. "You little punk." As he raised a hand to strike, a blur shot from the stalks behind. A piece of rusted metal smashed into his jaw. The man crumpled. Sylvia stood above them, out of breath, holding a rusted tire iron. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes blazed. "I told you," she whispered. "You don't touch him." They ran again, ducking into a nearby barn. Jessie gasped, heart pounding. Sylvia turned to him. "You okay?" He nodded. "You're brave, but next time don't be stupid." "We stick together, remember?" Jessie nodded again, more sheepishly this time. "Together." A second later, the door to the barn creaked. Another agent stepped in, gun raised. Sylvia raised her hands, but then something strange happened. The man hesitated. His eyes flicked to Sylvia. Recognition flashed in his expression. "You're green," he muttered. She stared back. "You gonna shoot me?" He lowered his weapon slightly. I used to work at GenCorp. You gave me a second chance when no one else would. After my brother's record screwed us both." Sylvia blinked. "Harlan?" He nodded slowly. Sylvia stepped closer. "Then help me, please." He looked torn. Then he stepped aside. "There's a truck behind the silo. Take it." Sylvia stared at him for a long beat, then said quietly, "Thank you." As she and Jessie ran, the agent raised his gun again, but only fired once into the air. And back at headquarters, his report would say, "Suspects evaded pursuit." That night, as they crossed the state line, Jessie turned to Sylvia. "Why'd he help us?" Sylvia exhaled. "Because sometimes the people they forget remember who stood by them." Jessie looked down at his shoe, where the drive still rested. And he knew the fight was far from over. Jessie didn't sleep that night. Neither did Sylvia. They stayed hidden in a run-down supply shed behind the abandoned community center near the old train tracks, the only place left in town where no one bothered to look. Every creak of wood or howl of wind made Jessie's heart stop. Sylvia, though clearly exhausted, remained unnervingly calm. She sat up straight, arms folded over her knees, eyes fixed on the cracks in the shed wall where faint light from the moon spilled through. "You sure they're not going to find us here?" Jessie asked in a hushed voice. I didn't survive this long by being careless, Sylvia said. Jessie studied her face. Even in the low light, he could see she looked different from earlier. Sharper, more alert. He was starting to understand that this wasn't just some woman down on her luck. She'd been someone, still was. "What's on that USB?" he asked. Sylvia hesitated. "It's proof that several high-level officials, people in government, law enforcement, even banking, have been siphoning billions from public funds. I tried to expose it. They tried to erase me." Jessie's eyes widened. "You mean like, the people chasing you are the ones stealing money from the country?" "Yes," she said simply. He rubbed his forehead. "And now they're after us." Sylvia gave a thin smile. "Well, technically they're after me. You just happen to be a decent human being." They sat in silence for a while. Jessie could feel the weight of it all pressing down on him. He was just a kid. He lived with his sick grandmother. He sold scrap to buy cereal, and now he was hiding from the same people who could ruin a billionaire's life. In the distance, the wail of sirens echoed. Sylvia didn't flinch. Instead, she turned to him. "I need your help, Jessie." He looked up. "I have a contact," she said. "A man named Elijah Grant. Used to be a lawyer for my company. I don't know if he'll still help me, but he's the only one I trust. He lives 3 towns over, and we need to get there by tomorrow night." Jessie blinked. "You mean, walk there?" "Not if we can find transportation." He laughed dryly. "What kind of transportation you think a poor kid with a wheelbarrow can get?" Sylvia leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You ever hear of a woman named Clarine Washington?" "Yeah." "She's a legend round here. Used to run the neighborhood watch, then got fired after she punched a councilman." Sylvia smiled. "She's also an old friend. If we can get to her house without getting spotted, she might help us." Jessie stood, brushing the dirt off his pants. "All right, let's move." They waited until just before dawn to sneak out. Sylvia, though weak, refused Jessie's offer to push her again in the wheelbarrow. "I walk on my own today," she said. They moved quietly through alleyways and back roads. At one point, they heard footsteps behind them and ducked behind a dumpster. A pair of patrol officers walked past, laughing about a breakfast spot. "They're everywhere," Jessie whispered. Sylvia pressed a hand to his shoulder. "They're not looking for a woman and a kid walking. They're looking for a fugitive and a billionaire." They reached Clarine's house just as the sun cracked over the rooftops. Jessie knocked 3 times, then once more softly. Moments later, Clarine opened the door with a bathrobe and a baseball bat. "Told y'all to stay off my lawn," she barked, until she saw who it was. Her eyes widened. "Sylvia!" "It's me," Sylvia said. Clarine pulled her inside instantly. "You got a whole damn army looking for you, girl. What the hell did you do?" "I told the truth," Sylvia said simply. Clarine snorted. "Ain't that always the most dangerous thing to do?" She sat them down, poured strong coffee, and listened as Sylvia explained the situation in detail. Clarine's expression hardened as she heard the names on the USB, many of whom she recognized from local headlines. "You're saying these folks been stealing from us for years?" "Yes." Clarine stood. "Then you're not running anymore. You're exposing them." Sylvia raised an eyebrow. "You think I haven't tried?" Clarine crossed her arms. "You didn't have me before." Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Jessie's breath caught. Clarine peered through the peephole. "It's Officer Darnell, local cop, used to be my nephew's friend." "Works nights." Sylvia's face tensed. "Can he be trusted?" Clarine nodded. "If anyone can, it's him." She opened the door, and Darnell stepped in, removing his cap. "I heard chatter on the radio,"
he said. Feds are offering 10,000 for a tip on your location, Miss Green. And word is, they think you're armed and dangerous. I'm neither, Sylvia replied. I know, he said. And that's why I'm here. I want to help. Jessie looked skeptical. Why would you risk your job? Darnell looked at him. Because if someone like her can get taken down for telling the truth, what hope is there for the rest of us? Clarine stepped forward. Then let's get to work. Sylvia raised the USB. We send this out tonight. Media, trusted officials, the whole network. If they come for me, they better be ready for a war. But Jessie wasn't looking at the USB. He was staring at Sylvia, who stood there now, not as a broken woman, but as a leader. He whispered to himself, they have no idea who they're messing with. And outside, in an unmarked car across the street, someone lifted a radio to his mouth and whispered back. They just made contact. We move at nightfall. The game had just shifted, and no one, not even Sylvia, saw what was coming next. Clarine's living room was dim, the only light coming from a single desk lamp that buzzed faintly over an old laptop. The USB drive sat plugged into its side like a key waiting to turn a lock that could blow the lid off the entire country's corruption. Sylvia paced. Jessie sat hunched forward, eyes locked on the screen. Officer Darnell stood near the window, curtain barely cracked as he watched the street outside. We can't just dump this all over the internet, Clarine said, sipping lukewarm coffee. If they think it's coming from us, they'll shut it down in minutes. Or worse, trace it back. I know that, Sylvia replied. That's why we need to get it into the hands of someone big, national. Someone they can't silence? You still got contacts from back then? Darnell asked. Sylvia hesitated. There's one. A journalist. Chloe Mendez. Last I heard, she was working with a non-profit news outlet in D.C. She's one of the few who didn't sell out. Clarine raised an eyebrow. That's a long way from here. Sylvia nodded. And we don't have long. Jessie stood up suddenly. Then let's go. Tonight. Clarine shook her head. Kid, they're watching the roads. Airports, trains. Probably got facial recognition flagged on every traffic cam from here to the coast. But they don't know who I am, Jessie said. Everyone turned to him. I'm just a poor kid in busted shoes and a hoodie. No one pays attention to me. You give me that USB, I'll get it to her. Sylvia's lips parted. Jessie, this isn't a game. These people will kill to keep their secrets buried. I know, he said. But you're the one they're after, not me. If you go, they'll catch you. If I go, I might just slip through. Silence filled the room. Even Darnell looked unsure. Then Clarine nodded slowly. He's right. Sylvia turned toward Jessie. Do you even know what you're offering? You're just a kid. Yeah, Jessie said. And maybe that's why they'll never see me coming. She studied him. The scrappy kid with holes in his sneakers and grease under his nails. But behind his eyes was something fierce, determined. The kind of bravery she remembered seeing in her younger self, before wealth, before betrayal. She placed the USB in his palm. Memorize the name, she said. Chloe Mendez. She's in D.C. at the Sentinel Beacon building. You find her, hand it over, and tell her everything. Got it? Got it. Darnell pulled out a folded map. I know a guy who drives a produce truck up the East Corridor. He leaves at 5 a.m. from the wholesale market outside town. No one checks trucks that early. I'll make the call. Clarine walked Jessie to the back room and helped him stuff a backpack with some food, a burner phone, and cash. You make it there, you change the world, she said, brushing a hand over his curls. I'm just delivering a file. No, baby. You're delivering justice. Hours later, just before sunrise, Darnell escorted Jessie down a shadowed alley behind the market. The produce truck rumbled nearby, engine purring low. "This is it," Darnell said. "Once you're in, stay quiet. Don't speak unless the driver asks." "His name's Mel. Tell him you're Clarine's nephew." Jessie swallowed hard, clutching the backpack straps. "I won't mess this up." "I know you won't," Darnell said, and gave him a firm nod. As Jessie climbed into the back of the truck, he didn't notice the figure in a black SUV parked across the lot, watching through binoculars. A man in a charcoal suit spoke softly into his wrist mic. "He's got it." "They're moving it through a decoy." In the living room back at Clarine's, Sylvia stared at the street, heart pounding. She felt exposed, like the world had narrowed into a sniper scope pointed at her back. "I need to go underground," she whispered. Clarine frowned. "What are you talking about?" "They'll come here. Soon." "I gave Jessie the file. They won't stop until they've got someone to punish." "But where will you go?" Sylvia looked down, then straightened her spine. "Back where it started." Darnell returned an hour later, face tight. "He's on his way, but we've got company. I spotted a black van circling twice already." "Unmarked plates." "Then let's give them a show," Sylvia said. "They're not getting Jessie, but I'll give them someone to chase." Clarine's eyes widened. "You're gonna bait them?" "I'm going to lead them away." Back in the SUV, the man in the suit narrowed his eyes as Sylvia exited Clarine's front door, hands in pockets, head held high. "Target in motion," he said. "Mobilize, intercept." But they didn't know what Sylvia had planned. They didn't know she'd emptied the USB, or that the file now sat in the pocket of a brave boy riding in a truck full of apples and broccoli, heading toward a city that might finally hear the truth. And neither did Jessie know that his journey wasn't going to be a straight line. Because across town, a different threat was waking up. Someone who'd once been close to Sylvia, someone who'd sold her out before, and was now hunting both her and the boy. The next move in the game was coming, and this time, it wouldn't just be survival. It would be war. Jessie felt every pothole beneath him as the truck rumbled down the dark highway, its cargo bay thick with the scent of onions and bruised tomatoes. The hum of tires on asphalt was the only rhythm keeping his nerves in check. He had barely slept. His mind kept returning to Sylvia's face when she placed the USB drive in his palm. Her voice echoed in his head. "You're delivering justice." But justice felt heavy now, like it weighed more than the entire truck. Suddenly the vehicle swerved slightly. Jessie's heart skipped. He braced himself, clutching his backpack tighter. The driver, Mel, grumbled something up front, then hit the turn signal. They were pulling off. Jessie crawled toward the small slit in the tarp, just enough to peer outside. A gas station. Somewhere rural. Maybe Virginia, maybe not. Mel opened the back. "Stretch your legs, kid. Quick." Jessie hesitated, then nodded and hopped out, feeling the cool morning air hit his face like a slap. He looked around. No one, just a bored clerk inside and a payphone that had seen better days. As he took a few steps to shake out his legs, a voice called from the shadows. "Hey, you from Georgia?" Jessie spun. A man leaned against the wall, cigarette glowing faintly. Something about him felt off. His smile was too still, his clothes too clean. "I asked you a question," the man said, stepping forward. Mel stepped between them. "He's my nephew. Mind your business." The man chuckled and flicked his cigarette. "That's funny, because his face just popped on a bulletin 2 hours ago. You might want to check your cargo." Jessie froze. Mel tensed. "Run," the driver whispered. Jessie didn't think. He darted behind the building, cutting between dumpsters and hopping a chain-link fence into the woods beyond. He didn't look back until the gas station lights were just a faint glow behind him. For the next hour, he ran. Through woods, across a dried creek bed. He tore through brambles that scratched his arms, over rocks that bruised his feet. When he finally stopped, chest heaving, he sank behind an abandoned barn near a gravel road. He pulled out the USB and stared at it, shaking. "They're already looking for me," he whispered. He thought of turning back, of burying it and pretending none of this had happened, but then he remembered Clarine's voice. "You changed the world." And he remembered the look on Sylvia's face when she said goodbye. Not fear, but faith. Jesse stood. From his backpack, he pulled out the burner phone. There were 2 numbers saved. One was labeled Emergency D, he called it. "Yeah," came the gruff voice. "It's Jesse, I lost the truck, I'm on foot." "They spotted me." A pause. "Where?" He gave the nearest road sign he'd seen. "I'll get you a ride," the voice said. "Don't stop moving." Meanwhile, back in Atlanta, Sylvia walked into an empty warehouse under the guise of meeting a journalist she hadn't seen in 10 years. Chloe Mendez. But instead of Chloe, she found a man in a grey suit leaning against a rusted desk. "Took you long enough," he said. Sylvia's body stiffened. Her eyes flicked toward the exits. "Locked." "You're not Chloe." "Nope. But I used to be on your payroll, remember?" She recognized him now. Lance, her former CFO, the one who sold company secrets to a hedge fund 5 years ago. The one who disappeared when the investigation started. "What do you want?" "You made quite the mess, Sylvia, riling up folks who'd rather stay rich and quiet." She didn't blink. "So they sent you to clean it up?" "No," he said, walking slowly toward her. "They sent me to offer you a deal." Sylvia laughed. "They still think I'm for sale." Lance smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Everyone breaks eventually. Not me." He leaned in. "You're not the target. The kid is." "But if you give us where he's headed, this whole thing can go away. Quiet. Painless." Sylvia stared at him. Then, without warning, she slammed her knee into his gut, grabbed a wrench from the table, and bolted for the back exit. Alarms triggered, voices yelled, but she was already through the alley and gone before Lance even stood back up. Back on the road, Jesse was picked up by a woman in a red Ford Bronco with tinted windows and a calm voice. Her name was Dana. "You're lucky Clarine called me," she said, watching him through the rearview mirror. Jesse didn't speak for a while. Then, quietly, "Why are they trying to stop this? The truth. Isn't that what everyone wants?" Dana sighed. "Some people don't fear the truth, Jesse. They fear what the truth will cost them." Jesse stared out the window, the city of DC coming into view in the distance. "And what about the people it could save? That's why you have to get it to the right hands." The car slowed as they reached a quieter neighborhood. Dana pointed to a glass building with blue trim. "The Sentinel Beacon. Chloe Mendez's office is on the 5th floor. Go now. I'll wait 10 minutes. If you don't come back out, I leave." Jesse nodded, heart pounding. He ran up the steps, but when he reached the 5th floor, the receptionist looked up in confusion. "Chloe left 10 minutes ago. Said she was going to meet someone at a warehouse." Jesse's blood turned cold. "They tricked her," he whispered. He turned and bolted down the stairs, but as he reached the lobby, 2 men in suits stepped through the front doors. Jesse turned to run, only to be grabbed by a hand on his shoulder. "Jesse?" a voice asked. "Aha." He looked up, ready to fight, but it wasn't a cop. It was Chloe Mendez. Hair pulled into a ponytail, eyes sharp. She stared at him. "You're the kid from Sylvia. Where's the file?" Shaking, Jessie handed her the USB. And in that moment, surrounded by a maze of lies, shadows, and pursuit, something clicked. He was no longer just a kid in a hoodie. He was the key to a revolution. And the final act hadn't even begun. Jessie sat in the back of Chloe Mendez's office, watching as she inserted the USB into her laptop. Her fingers moved fast, her eyes darting across the screen. But Jessie could feel it. Something was wrong. The lights in the office flickered for a brief second, like a silent warning from the building itself. "Is it working?" he asked, voice tense. Chloe didn't answer immediately. Her eyes narrowed at the screen. "This file's encrypted." Deep. Whoever built this didn't want it cracked easily. Jessie's heart dropped. "Can you break it?" She looked up, her expression unreadable. "Not alone, but I know someone who can." Before Jessie could ask who, she was already dialing a number. "Leo?" "It's Mendez, I've got something." "No, not over the phone." "Meet me in 40 minutes. Bring the ghost drive." She hung up and grabbed her coat. "Let's go," she said. They exited through the back of the building, slipping into the alley. Chloe's car, a matte grey sedan with government plates, waited a few feet away. She pressed the unlock button, and just as the lights blinked, a gunshot cracked the air. Jessie dropped to the ground. Chloe spun around, eyes scanning the rooftops. "Keep your head down!" she barked, pulling him behind a dumpster. Another shot rang out, this time pinging off the metal beside them. "They found us," Jessie whispered. "Clearly," Chloe muttered. She reached into her coat and pulled out a Glock. "You trust me?" Jessie hesitated, but nodded. She moved quickly, using the dumpster as cover while firing 2 rounds toward the rooftop. It was enough to make whoever was up there scatter. Then she turned to Jessie. "On my signal, you run to the car." "Back seat, stay low, got it?" He nodded again. "Now!" They both darted for the sedan. Chloe yanked the driver door open and slid in. Jessie dove into the back. Tires screeched as she hit the gas, weaving through side streets like she'd done it 1,000 times. Jessie clutched the seat. "Who were they?" he shouted. "Not cops," she replied. "Private contractors. Someone paid them a lot to make sure this file never sees daylight." They didn't talk much the rest of the ride. Every turn felt like it could be their last. Finally, Chloe pulled into a quiet parking lot behind a bakery with the lights off. A man in his 60s stood at the door smoking a pipe, his grey hoodie blending into the shadows. "That's Leo," Chloe said. "Used to be NSA, until he walked out with half their encryption protocols in his head." Leo squinted at Jessie as they approached. "This the kid?" "This is the mission," Chloe replied. Leo led them inside, down a flight of stairs to a room that looked more like a hacker's lair than a bakery basement. Wires everywhere. 10 screens glowing with codes Jessie didn't understand. And a coffee pot that looked like it had been brewing since 2005. "Give me the drive," Leo said. Chloe handed it over. Leo inserted it and immediately began typing with almost supernatural speed. As the room buzzed with activity, Jessie sat on a folding chair, rubbing his face. "Is this really going to work?" Leo didn't look up. "Depends on what you mean by work. If you want me to open it, sure. If you want to stay alive after I do, we'll see." After 20 agonizing minutes, a soft beep sounded.
Leo leaned back. "You've got some nasty stuff in here." Chloe stepped closer. "Show me." Images filled the screens, scanned documents, bank transfer records, photos, internal memos.
Names of powerful politicians and CEOs. A web of shell companies tied to a slush fund of billions, all funneled through charities meant to uplift underserved communities. Jesse felt his stomach twist. They've been using fake non-profits to launder money, Chloe said slowly. And some of those names, that's the governor, and Senator Dalton, and, Jesus, that's the mayor of Atlanta. Leo clicked one last folder. Then the room went silent. Jesse leaned forward. A video began to play. Grainy, time-stamped. It showed a meeting in a sleek, glass-walled room. Sylvia was there. Calm. Alone, facing 4 white men in expensive suits. "You'll drop this," one of them said. "Or we drop you." Sylvia didn't blink. "I don't scare easily. Your stock will vanish. Your name will be erased. You'll be labeled a fraud. I've been labeled worse. Then the boy dies." Jesse's breath caught. The screen froze on Sylvia's face. Calm, but her eyes told the story. Fear, but also fire. The room was quiet for a long time. Chloe turned to Jesse. This will take down half the establishment." Jesse stood. "Then what are we waiting for?" But before Leo could answer, the lights cut out. Everything went black. Jesse's heart pounded. Chloe drew her weapon. "Leo?" No answer. From upstairs came the creak of a door opening. Jesse heard it. The heavy footsteps, slow and deliberate. Chloe grabbed Jesse's arm and pulled him toward the corner. "Emergency exit! Go!" They pushed through the narrow hallway toward the fire escape, but someone was already coming down from above. Chloe spun and shot twice. The figure dropped. "Move!" Outside, rain had started to fall. Cold. Hard. They jumped into the sedan and peeled out of the lot, Jesse gasping for breath. Leo didn't make it out. But the drive did, and Jesse knew now. There was no more running. They would either expose the truth or be buried with it. The city skyline looked strangely calm that morning, like it didn't know the storm brewing underneath it. Jesse stood in the parking garage rooftop, hoodie pulled over his head, staring at the skyline with clenched fists. Chloe leaned against the car behind him, watching silently. The flash drive, now duplicated and backed up in 3 separate locations, sat safely in her coat pocket. "You sure about this?" she asked. Jesse turned. "They came after us after Leo. My mom warned me this day would come." "I'm not hiding anymore." Chloe's phone buzzed. A secure message. "They've called an emergency press conference." "Noon, City Hall. Governor Miller will be there." Jesse's eyes narrowed. "Good. So will we." But Chloe hesitated. "You realize walking into that building with evidence that could destroy half the state government isn't just dangerous, right?" "It's suicidal." "Then we go loud," Jesse said. "We make sure the world sees it before anyone can stop us." Across town, Governor Henry Miller tightened his tie in the green room of the press hall. His face was perfectly composed, but his hands betrayed a tremor. His aide, Marcus Lang, entered with a forced smile. "All security points are covered. If the kid shows, we'll handle it." Miller scoffed. "He's just a boy. He doesn't understand what game he's playing." But Marcus hesitated. "He's not alone. Word is, he's working with Chloe Mendez." That name made Miller's face harden. "She should have stayed buried in Homeland. Get me Councilman Hughes. I want contingency." Meanwhile, Jesse and Chloe were making their way through the crowded plaza outside City Hall. Protesters were already gathering. Some knew something was coming. Others just sensed the shift in the air. Then a voice called out behind them. "Jesse!" He turned. A thin, wiry man approached, breathless. "Name's Darius. I used to work with your mom." "We followed your story,"
Some of us, we've been waiting for this. Jessie blinked. Waited for what? For you to finish what she started. Darius slipped Jessie a small earpiece. You're not going in alone. Chloe leaned in. He's clean? Darius nodded, and wired into every media outlet that still believes in truth. Inside the press room, the governor took the podium. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned forward. Thank you for joining me today. I'm here to assure the public. The doors at the back opened. Every head turned. Jessie stepped inside with Chloe beside him. A murmur swept through the room. Security moved quickly, but a half-dozen reporters stood and blocked their path. We want to hear him, one yelled. Governor Miller's smile didn't break, but his knuckles turned white on the podium. Jessie Carter, he said, you've caused quite a stir. But this isn't a place for... This is exactly the place, Jessie interrupted, stepping forward. Chloe pulled a small projector from her coat and synced it with the flash drive. In seconds, the wall behind the governor filled with the damning footage, documents, audio, and the video of Sylvia confronting the men who threatened her. Gasps rippled through the room. Then the bombshell landed. Jessie stepped up to the mic. My name is Jessie Carter. The woman in that video was my mother, Sylvia Carter. She wasn't just a philanthropist or a businesswoman. She was a watchdog, and she was murdered because of what she uncovered. Miller stepped forward, trying to cut in. This is preposterous. Anyone can fake her, Jessie snapped, voice cracking with fury. She died protecting people you never cared about. She was labeled a liar, a fraud. But now everyone sees the truth. You used children's charities to fund your campaigns, to launder millions, and when she threatened that, you killed her. Chaos erupted. Cameras rolled, reporters shouted questions, half the room surged toward Jessie, others toward the governor. And then, unexpectedly, a man in uniform walked out from behind the curtain. General Robert Ellison. Decorated. Untouchable, and until now, silent. He stepped to the mic and looked at Governor Miller. I warned you not to touch her, he said coldly. You didn't listen. He turned to the cameras. I was there when Sylvia Carter handed over this evidence. And I've seen what these men are capable of, but I'm also here to say the Pentagon has opened an investigation, and federal agents are now on their way to City Hall. Governor Miller's jaw fell. Outside, sirens wailed. Dozens of unmarked SUVs screeched to a halt outside. FBI. Department of Justice, federal marshals. In seconds, agents swarmed the building. One of them walked directly up to Miller, badge in hand. Governor Henry Miller, you're under arrest for conspiracy, embezzlement, obstruction of justice, and murder. The crowd gasped. As Miller was handcuffed, he turned to Jessie. You think you've won? Jessie stepped closer, calm and steady. I didn't win. The truth did. Outside, the crowd had grown into hundreds. When Jessie and Chloe stepped out, people erupted into applause. Darius greeted them, nodding. You just turned the tide. Jessie looked up at the sky, letting the sunlight hit his face. For the first time, it didn't feel like the weight of his past was crushing him. He wasn't just Sylvia Carter's son anymore. He was her voice. Her vengeance. And now, her legacy. The courthouse lobby was nearly silent except for the faint squeak of Jessie's sneakers as he stepped through the grand double doors. Morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting golden rays on the polished marble floors. The place felt sacred now, not because of the building, but because of what had just happened inside. Governor Henry Miller had been denied bail. The courtroom erupted when the judge called it a flight risk with connections too deep to trust. His lawyers stammered, but the truth was already out. Jessie Carter and Chloe Mendez had not just exposed a political empire,
They'd dismantled it. Jesse walked out into the crowd, waiting beyond the courthouse steps. Reporters swarmed him with questions, but he didn't speak. Not yet. He spotted Darius waving from across the street and moved toward him. "You did it, kid," Darius said with a proud grin. "You blew the whole damn thing open," Jesse exhaled. "He tried to crush her, and in doing so, he created me." Darius put a hand on his shoulder. "So what now?" Jesse looked out at the gathering crowd. There were people with signs, some with his mom's name, others with his. It was no longer just about revenge. It had become something bigger. "I want her name cleared officially," Jesse said. "I want the Carter Foundation reinstated with full control. And I want the city to know what she really stood for. That's where I start." Behind them, Chloe approached with a folded newspaper in her hand. "Front page," she said, handing it to him. There, in bold letters, Sylvia Carter, from disgraced donor to city's conscience. Underneath, a photo of Jesse at the press conference, speaking with fire in his eyes. Jesse felt his throat tighten. "She would have hated the attention," he said quietly. Chloe smiled. "But she'd be proud, beyond proud." Just then, a familiar voice called out. "Jesse?" He turned confused. An older man stepped forward, weathered but dignified in a wool coat and hat. He looked down, almost ashamed. "I'm Anthony Grant. I worked for your mother, back in the early days. Before everything fell apart. I was there the day she disappeared." Jesse's breath caught. "What?" Anthony nodded. "There's something you should know. She didn't just uncover corruption. She was building something. A school, Jesse. For kids like you, in the neighborhoods they always forgot. She'd already bought the land. She left it in your name." Jesse was stunned. "Why are you telling me this now?" Anthony looked at him squarely. "Because the truth set all of us free. And now, it's time to build." The words hit Jesse hard. He thought the fight was over. But maybe this was just the beginning. Later that week, Jesse stood at the edge of an empty lot in South Haven. Overgrown, broken fence lines, the foundation of a dream buried beneath weeds. Chloe stood beside him, clipboard in hand. "You really gonna do this?" she asked. Jesse looked around. "I have to. I'm not just my mother's son. I'm part of what she started." He pulled out the original deed, faded and worn, signed in his mother's sweeping pen. Jesse looked up, a fire in his eyes. "We'll call it the Sylvia Carter Academy, and every kid who walks through those doors will know they matter." Chloe smiled. "And we're gonna need help." Jesse nodded, then turned to camera crews waiting in the distance. He stepped forward and spoke into the mic. "My mom once said, the world only changes when regular people decide they're not afraid anymore. I was afraid. I hid. But not anymore. If you believe kids like me deserve better, if you believe truth matters, then help us. Share this story. Keep it alive. Because this isn't just about one billionaire. This is about all of us." He paused. "And to anyone out there who ever felt invisible, know this. You are seen, you are heard, and together we rise." The screen faded to black. Then a message appeared. Inspired by true events. Subscribe to support stories that uplift truth, courage, and justice. Because sometimes the smallest push changes everything.